Digital Around the World.
Imagine there was 27 hours of traveling from Europe to Brazil, from Brazil to USA. We were in Australia, Japan, Korea, China, Singapore, India, Africa, and now we are back to Europe because we have several speakers from all over Europe, but also with speakers from Africa and Brazil and USA joining us for this closing session. And I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Latif Ladid and Dr. Andreas Nettstreiter, who are the co-chair of this session, and they will present this closing plenary session. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention.
Thank you, Pedro. I'm very pleased that we had 27 hours that went flying like mad. Thanks for the efforts behind the scenes by our colleagues from DAtW2020 as well as from Pedro's group. Obviously, this initiative had the intent of unlocking and unmuting our friends for, again, the known collaboration and cooperation we have around the world. So while some governments are basically muting people to depression, so this event is a very nice experiment for all of us to see that the world goes on, and we have to positively look at this thing and come out strongly out of it. And for this purpose, together with my co-chair Andreas, we will be introducing some people with vision and light to put in front of us. And I would like to start with Bilal Jamoussi, who's very known. He doesn't need any introduction. He's the current chief of the study group at the ITU, and I would like to invite him to give us his thoughts about what are the activities that are very important today for us from the ITU, what kind of challenges, and his vision. Bilal.
Thank you very much, Latif, for that very nice introduction. Dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What a marathon of 27 hours with 10 stops around the world. I'd like to thank the IOT Forum and its partners for giving me the opportunity to join this marathon. The Digital Around the World event has been pivotal in taking the IoT Week discussions forward. It was indeed an enriching and unique experience to attend sessions and interact with experts from across the world over the course of these 27 hours. I gave it my best to attend as many sessions as possible, given the importance of the topics and the relevance to the work of the ITU on 5G, IoT, smart cities, etc. IoT is a topic close to ITU's heart. The first international standards defining the Internet of Things was published by the ITU in 2012. It's the recommendation Y2060, which gave the globe a definition on IoT as the global infrastructure for the information society, enabling advanced services by interconnecting physical and virtual things based on existing and evolving interoperable information and communication technologies. So with that basic definition back then, we have come a long way as a community, and we have seen that over the past 24 or 27 hours. And we now have a platform, Study Group 20 in ITU, to try to consolidate the international global landscape that is quite rich and diverse for standards development of IoT. This is really critical because when we talk about 5G and IoT being a major component, the massive connectivity in 5G, we see that today's 5G deployment, the initial deployments have been all around the ultra broadband, but the IoT connectivity to 5G is coming. And part of the biggest challenge that I see and I hear from operators is that IoT connectivity to the 5G opens up the perimeter of security. So it's critical for an operator to have confidence in that secure perimeter with IoT devices connecting to its network. And I believe that remains a challenge for our community to continue to endeavor in providing secure IoT identification and connectivity to the 5G network. The international standards are multidimensional, and including addressing the market needs, driving global innovation, facilitating interoperability, and fostering innovation, to name a few. And we believe the platform we have in the ITU with 193 member states, 700 private entities, and 140 academia is a unique platform for that international dialogue, and to try to simplify and consolidate that huge and rich landscape of IoT solutions and devices. Of course, during this journey, we heard about the United for Smart Sustainable Cities, an initiative with 16 other UN organizations to really bring implementations of the Internet of Things and smart cities to cities around the world. And we have hundreds of cities now implementing the ITU standard on the key performance indicators for smart sustainable cities. We cannot do it alone. I think it's a collaborative effort. All the SDOs need to work hand in hand. And in that sense, I'm very grateful that I've heard many speakers in the last 27 hours talk about the collaborative work we have with ISO, with IEC, IEEE, Sigfox, LoRa, TM Forum, 1M2M, and it's critical to have that collaborative effort globally in order to bring standards to bear. In particular, the World Standards Cooperation of IEC, ISO, and ITU has a task force on smart cities, which is trying to address a more collaborative and efficient standards development for smart cities going forward. We, of course, mentioned the 5G from a security perimeter perspective, but of course, ITU plays an important role in the spectrum allocation and management, as well as the satellite orbits, especially with low orbit satellites, as well as the fixed network aspects of 5G. And as I mentioned, the security being an important aspect of it. There were so many rich sessions that I wanted to attend, but it's nice to see that at least sampling some of them was quite enriching, to see how much the innovation doesn't stop. We continue to hear of new ideas, of new ways of doing things, hearing about the research happening in the universities, and those are usually the initial points of standardization at the international level, whether in the form of focus groups or study groups or other standard fora. It's always important to have that intellectual property from academia find its way directly to international standards. I'm delighted to note the many projects which were presented yesterday, like the 5G Drive, the NG IoT, the IOF 2020 NADIS, among others. And we are pursuing the various standardization activities like V2V, smart agriculture, smart water management, IoT implementation, etc. It is, of course, important to remember the declaration we had back in a previous, in IoT Week 2017, related to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we see that we have come a long way in meeting some of those SDGs, but we still have a lot of work to be done. So that declaration, as you recall, in IoT Week 2017 was adopted by over 1,000 participants. So we look forward to continuing to address the SDGs. And we note there, and we want to mention the AI for Good Global Summit, which is an ITU event along with XPRIZE Foundation, in trying to look with the ACM and 37 other UN organizations on how we can use AI to address those sustainable development goals. This year we've gone digital and it's around the world. We've been able to touch more than 50,000 participants globally in a series of webinars. We would welcome all of you to join our webinar series on AI for Good Summit. To conclude, I'd like to thank Dr. Sebastian Ziegler for inviting ITU to this impactful event. We certainly hope that the standardization activities that myself and my colleagues highlighted over the last 24 hours will be beneficial to your work. I will take this step further here and hope that I see more of you joining the standardization field as well. And finally, I'd like to thank and hand back to Dr. Latif and Andreas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bilal. I'm glad that you have summarized the entire event, so I don't need to do it myself. Thank you for taking that burden away from me with your extremely important contribution, especially to the developing countries that look up to you for guidance, and this is very much appreciated around the world. I would like to invite my very old friend Mario Campolago, who doesn't need to have any introduction. He's acting Director General of the famous department DGIT, which runs the entire networks of the European Commission, but he's more known as among the European and the worldwide research community as the superstar of initiating many new initiatives. I remember him back in '99 seeing directly the impact of IPv6, and his latest stunt with starting 5G, being as the biggest bank research ahead, putting a lot of money on this thing, and it has now spread around the world. So I know you are a new function, and you wanted to talk about what you are doing today, which is a very important angle to look at as well, since I know you are full of innovation in this area. Mario. You need to unmute, Mario. Yeah.
You are absolutely right. So thank you, Latif. Thanks very much. And I'm sure that I don't deserve the sort of introduction that you did. First words to thank the IoT Forum for the invitation and for this extraordinary, I would say, event. And I appreciated the opportunity to listen carefully to Dr. Bilal Jamousi for its wrap up on the various topics that have been discussed. That gave me a sense of how rich was this change. And fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, I would not make comments on that one, but the moment where I'm talking to you right now, we are actually finding that the second wave of this COVID is slowly but surely sweeping through a lot of countries in Europe and in the world. And some of the new measures that are being taken will certainly bring us.
You have to unmute again. You unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
I was saying that at the moment I'm talking to you, there is a second wave of COVID that is sweeping slowly but surely through the world, and the new measures of confinement and others that we see will bring us the memories of the beginning of this situation. And if I say that, it's because I want to bring to you a few key words and preoccupation reflections on how we are addressing the question of the COVID from a administrative, organizational, and technical aspect. The first message that I reflect is, from one day to the other in March, the digital transformation that was so much talked about in big organizations like ours, but I would say in all the organizations around, suffered a very strong push. A lot of the organizations were not prepared for the telework. Their infrastructures were based on the notion of an office and a network, a physical network, very performant, connecting these various offices. Yes, most of us had a bit of a notion of some people teleworking, but from one day to the other, you get this massive teleworking. In our case, of the European Commission, we go from 4,000 or 5,000 average maximum to 40,000 people doing telework. This raised questions of the reinforcement of the teleworking capacity, raised immediate questions about cybersecurity, but sometimes less known, brought a lot of emphasis on the operational side. The help desk was flooded with questions about what is my password for my Wi-Fi at home, and more seriously, the well-being of the employees being at home, not having possibly good office conditions or screens was a big challenge. So the question is, was this totally unforeseen, or we in the public administrations and in very large organizations already some digital strategy? And does this situation push it or potentially benefit it or not? I think yes, because most of the organizations, including the public administrations, already recognize, for example, the importance of data as a central cornerstone for our digital strategy. Data that for public administrations is very fundamental, and there's some particular requirements, in particular when we think about Europe and the values that Europe pushes through, the values of the respect for the privacy, data protection, etc., are very important. But yes, we had a lot of plans in terms of the use of data analytics, of the use of AI on top of data to really make the public administration closer to the citizen, centered in the citizen, without needing to ask 10 times the same thing. And if you think about technologies like blockchains that were particular or that are particularly important in some contexts, yes, there were some experimentations and even the use of chatbots to overcome some of the flow of information in their tests, for example, is something that was in the practice. So yes, the first acceleration unfortunately caused by a crisis, helped us on reinforcing the digital strategy. Was there any aspect that was not very positive? Yes, sometimes we know that in those crises, the money flies into some areas that have urgent needs, and they don't help us to prepare for the future. So in some cases, the benefits of investing in IT are felt in other places, and we don't realize that in order to have these benefits, we need to really reinforce the funding of the IT. In fact, there is normally a potential decoupling between the investments and where the effects take place. If you think now broader in terms of Europe, and I think that this is applicable for any organization that works on the digital transformation administrations, we need to think about the cooperation between digital public administrations. And in Europe, this is particularly important because Europe has a special construction. So the interoperability is particularly interesting. So the question then is, can digital public administrations live as in the past, autonomous, delivering the services, designing the services? And the answer is, in a digital world, this is not possible. We need to really embrace the innovation. And that's why I think that my last message will be around the notion of the engagement of the innovation ecosystems, where new technologies like IoT or 5G or cloud or any aspect of artificial intelligence or blockchain find really the most important knowledge and innovation creativity, and that's basically there that we need to try to build. It's creating around the public administrations an innovation ecosystem that actually understands the needs of the citizens, understands the needs of the public administrations, and is able to create new services actually complement the services that are given by the public administrations. And that's probably what we can call as a GovTech environment. And I think that understanding that we were forced to accelerate amazingly the modernization of public administrations, understanding that this with each other requires interoperability, and understanding that we need to associate the innovation ecosystems of different member states to help the public administrations to be more effective. When we talk about climate, greening, emissions, all of these points to the use, for example, of IoT and making a better use of the technology to serve the regulation and the policies. That is, I think, a challenge that I think that all of you will understand, and that I think that we can cooperate together to make sure that becomes a reality in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario. Just I recall that Napoleon has started all of this admin nightmare, and you are trying to fix that. So that's a work of 200 years. For the next of you, I wish you many decades of life to fix this. That's the base for smart cities and so on and so forth. So I think you are taking the issue from the bottom wish you a lot of luck with this one. As a matter of fact, every decade either finishes with a disaster or starts with one. So, for instance, the 90s finished with the internet bubble. The 2000 started with 9/11. The 2010 started with the subprime. And here we are starting with another one at the beginning. So I think I would expect this decade to be even a better one with people like you and many on this call, to make this decade again another good one. Thank you, Mario, for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask my co-chair, Andreas, to take over from here. Andreas Nettstretter.
Yes, right. Even in Germany, that's not an easy name. So, yes, also from my side, a warm welcome here. And I will introduce the next 4 speakers in our closing session. And I'm also happy to be part of this event. And I'm also looking forward to, let's say, some next IoT weeks during the next years. And yeah. Okay, the next speaker in our session is Tanya. Tanya is the CEO and co-founder of BlueSpecs and the IoT Tribe. I think she's also quite active in IoT, and I also think that most of you already know her. So Tanya, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Andreas. That's very kind of you. And indeed, I am part of AIoT. I am one of the board members and therefore have had the privilege of speaking and working with many of you before. So, of course, first I would like to thank the organisers of IoT Week, particularly Sebastian, for the invitation to join the event today. It is an honour to be part of the closing panel, but of course, also to be part of a panel that has such esteemed speakers. So I can only hope I live up also to their contributions. In the words of President von der Leyen, we're entering Europe's digital decade. And it's a decade that starts with a need that is as social as it is economic. We need to use the opportunity to redesign, rebuild, and recover. And to do this, we need to work on several intersecting fronts. We need to work with technology, we need to work with people, and we need to take into consideration the planet. So first of all, let's take technology. We're working in an environment in which the winner takes all. A few platforms dominate what and where we buy. Our communications are filtered and passed by organizations that are not necessarily aligned with our values, cultures all over the world, and who are shaping the way societies think. But a more federated model is around the corner, and data will no longer be in the possession of a few big players. A more open playing field in which new companies can build the services and products of the future, and where vendor lock-in is a thing of the past, is, as I say, just around the corner. I think Mario referred to this. For this to happen, the computing continuum must become a reality, enabling devices and applications to move seamlessly through geographies from Nairobi to Bucharest to Singapore, across domains and data spaces. At IoT Tribe, for example, we're working with some really talented founders that can make an impact to society. A company such as GeoFem that predicts Earth movements that can have an impact on critical infrastructure, such as railway lines in South Africa, and thereby avoid serious accidents and loss of life, or Satellite IoT, which is a satellite telecom operator for global continuous IoT connectivity, and they merge satellite and terrestrial networks under 5G protocols. But for these companies to grow and become global leaders, they need to access investment and access clients. And in both these arenas, Europe lags behind other world regions. Appetite for risk tends to be low, as is the understanding of potential gains. Secondly, people. Everyone must understand the consequences of using technology. The choices we make when we tick the I agree box, and most of us, let's face it, do not read what it says, of not changing default passwords when we buy a connected device for our small business or home. Access to connectivity is critical. Without connectivity, we are deepening the social divides in everything from safe healthcare through to skills that are needed for the jobs of the future. Now, addressing the digital skills challenge is a job for policymakers, but also for companies and individuals. There's a great initiative launched by the European Commission's DG Connect, which is called the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, currently has 514 members from across Europe, 90 of which are SMEs. 121 of those members have pledged to take positive action to reduce the digital skills gap in Europe. They've benefited over 13 million Europeans. And just a couple of statistics on the things that have been achieved: over 90,000 digital skills certificates, 32,000 digital jobs matched with candidates. 8 of these pledges are specifically oriented to SMEs and are affecting 42,000 SME workers, again, across Europe. Just an example again of some of the pledges there. The NVIDIA Deep Learning Institute have offered 200 free fundamentals of deep learning for computer vision courses for SMEs. 18 pledges are focusing on advanced digital skills, so it's not just about some of the enabling skills that might allow people that do not have any digital skills to understand how they can use their smartphone to access their healthcare. It's also about something deeper. So, for example, 57,000 people across Europe have been able to take part in advanced digital skills initiatives, but 5.7 million of them, so 10 times more, have been able to access opportunities to develop these basic digital skills I was referring to earlier. My third point, the planet. Now, it's been widely recognized that intelligent connectivity is essential to achieve the United Nations Broadband Commission's agenda for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So Bilal made a reference to these in his intervention a few minutes earlier. Deployment targets have been set for 2025. Some of those targets probably need to be accelerated rather than put back, which is always a tendency and the temptation for companies and countries that are not doing so well against those targets. But all of these goals really underline the importance of communication systems and networks in addressing economic growth, multiple social challenges, and other critical issues around climate change and sustainability. So just to mention a few of those: supplying clean, affordable and secure energy by digitizing and decarbonizing grids, mobilizing industry for the clean and circular economy, the ICT sector, so technology sector itself, and the sector, specifically those companies responsible for manufacturing devices, need to improve their track record in making sure that those devices can be, well, first of all, probably that they have the longest life possible. And secondly, that when they are obsolete, and they will obviously at some stage become obsolete, that the components are able to be recycled, repurposed, reused. Accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobility through digitally enabled mobility as a service initiatives of shared mobility. And from farm to fork, of course, precision agriculture, for example, can lead to a 25% saving in fuel, in energy use, and a 15% reduction in seeds and fertilizers. So again, these are just a few areas in which action is currently being taken across the world, not just in Europe, and sharing experiences on what works, our progress towards the common goals, and what remains to be done is a key part to ensuring our digital transformation for good. So once again, thank you, Sebastian, Pedro, and thank you, Andreas, and the rest of you at this session today.
Yes, Tanya, thank you. I think we'll now move to the next speaker, back to the US. It's Stephen Mellor. He's part of the Industrial Internet Consortium, and I think he will tell us something about the situation in the US when it comes to the use of IoT. Stephen, please. You are still muted.
There we go. Thank you.
Now,
it's
yes.
Always a struggle. Thank you so much, Andreas, for the invitation to speak today. It is rather early this morning. It's 3:30 on the West Coast. So please forgive me if I stumble somewhat and stop to drink as much coffee as I possibly can. As you know, the US is very much of an innovator, and I appreciate the comments from Tanya Suarez just a moment ago in that matter, and I suggest strongly that Europeans take care to remember that. I do appreciate the last 30 minutes that reminded me why I emigrated from Europe 30 years ago. But let me get straight into business and talk a little bit about digital transformation and the kinds of things that we're doing. I began with a short talk on digital transformation in the edge. That's just one digital enabler. We all need these digital enablers to achieve the industrial, business, organizational, and societal goals that we're talking about. But I think it's important that we both understand what those enablers are and also understand how they can be deployed. And this very much mirrors the growth of the Industrial Internet Consortium over the last 6 years. We began by thinking about what we needed to do to create a marketplace. The US and the US companies have been, I believe, excellent at doing precisely that, creating marketplaces, making them work. So digital distributed computing in the edge, of course, is one digital enabler. Digital ledger technology is another, coming in several forms, blockchain, and the several other forms. Artificial intelligence, of course, with machine learning and digital learning are very important. I remember being at a conference, I think it was in Berlin a couple of years ago, where the question was asked, who's ahead? Which is always a silly question because you can never really know. A professor wandered on for a long time, not being very clear, but when it was my turn, I was. The answer is China, for the obvious reason that they have data and limited privacy controls. When you have all that data, you have a lot. The algorithms that we use in AI were algorithms that I learned about when I was in college in the early 70s. It's the ability now to execute them and the ability to look at large, huge quantities of data. And China, of course, has that. We have mentioned connectivity, and I think that's, of course, a key and underlying technology. Without that, none of this would be happening. And then we can start thinking about how we move on into deployments. My colleague, Dan Isaacs, excuse me, who's the Chief Technical Director of the Object Management Group's sister program, the Digital Twin Consortium, also spoke on the various work that they are doing. And they were initially, and I say initially because they're only 6 months old, organized around verticals, by which I mean things like infrastructure. The initiator of this activity is a man named Bill Rue, who was from GE Digital for a while and is now the Chief Technical Officer for digital at a company called Lend-Lease, which is a building company in Sydney, Australia. So infrastructure is a key thing, building information management systems, understanding road transportation, and so on and so forth. Manufacturing, of course, everyone is very interested in that, and especially in Germany. Defense and aerospace is still quite big, an area in which they work. Natural resources, energy, of course, is key. Lots of interest in that particular area, particularly around distributed energy resources such as solar, wind, and so on and so forth. That's obviously important, but I would also include things like mining. And I think over time we'll be seeing other natural resources areas that are of great interest. The kind of thing that we do in mining these days is quite stupendous. I recall hearing the Prime Minister of Western Australia once saying that his job was to dig up half of Western Australia and send it to China. You need an awful lot of technology. And then, of course, something that's very much on our list at the moment, healthcare. Life sciences and healthcare. These two things go together. Healthcare, of course, is kind of the pointy end, if you wish. But life sciences, the whole science of understanding how it is that we work and how it is that we live is clearly key. So these are deployments, right? We can talk about the technology as much as we like, But when it comes down to it, we have to be thinking about how we use that technology in those 5 areas that I just listed. And of course, we can break those down. We actually have one slide where we broke it down into about 60 components that you could look at. Retail, for example, there's a whole series of things you can do in retail that people don't think about until they get into the detailed technology. So deployment, making sure that things work and making sure that we can actually deliver value. But beyond all of that, I have to add the concept of trustworthiness. I keep hearing the term cybersecurity. I would like to limit its use for the simple reason that cybersecurity is only a very small part of security. You need physical security in your factories. You need all sorts of other kinds of security for devices. For example, a device that is in a desert at an oil well, let's say, taking oil out of the ground. How is it powered? How are you going to secure that? How are you going to maintain connectivity in a potentially politically dangerous environment? Security is only a part of it. We have to consider privacy. Of course, GDPR is an issue in here. Resilience, reliability, most of all, safety. Those things taken together comprise trustworthiness. And we need to build trustworthy systems. When I visit the UK, I sometimes see screaming headlines saying Frankenfoods, meaning genetically modified foods. Nobody worries about that here. Nobody has died. Same in Brazil. It's huge soy crops that are GM, no drama. But the key here is not to make a difference between those two cultures, but rather to point out that for any of this to be successful, the people to whom we are delivering it have to trust it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. And I think now you can decide if you go to sleep or if you stay awake till the day breaks. So
it's my wake up time anyway. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we would move to Brazil, to our next speaker. It's Gabriel Marao. He's president of the Brazilian IoT Forum, and he will give a short overview on the IoT activities in Brazil. Gabriel, please go on.
Okay, thank you. It's really a pleasure for me representing Brazil and the Brazilian IoT Forum to be participating in this. We believe that it's a very good initiative, very good and very important. And it is consistent with what our forum has been doing during these last years. We have been participating in IoT Week several times. We have been introducing, showing to Europe what we have been doing here, and also bringing people to from Europe to talk. This is something very important for us, and we believe our forum from the beginning. We believe that it's like a creed for us. We have to integrate and collaborate with all the countries in the world. It's the only way to really do IoT. IoT really has to break the walls. To like during some time, Europe was saying the silos. We have to break and integrate. Then we believe that every country should participate, like Brazil. We believe that at least in the agribusiness, in retail, we are up front in many places than the world that we could collaborate. And we have many areas that we are not up front. And the big quest that IoT has, that is interoperability. We need this international collaboration to find the right way for unique identification and all these things. Then we really believe that this is something that has to go on. I don't know if this is the final format, but I really would incentivize Sebastian, Mirko, Serjan to really think and make it keep working. And we are willing to cooperate and to do together, because for us, it means a very important step in start the realization of this dream of collaboration in IoT and breaking the walls. I think that really we can give something, and really that's the way to collaborate, is to get something and you give and you receive. I think that is really fantastic initiative, and we hope that it can continue. You see, the coronavirus is really terrible, but in some way it helped us to make this meeting would not be happening, and then maybe that we could accelerate and get things like this. Our forum, we are in this moment making our 5th Congress, and we have people speaking from outside Brazil. And it's much easier than have to take an air flight and come here. Then repeating and finishing. We congratulate all of you that prepared and worked. I'm sure that it's very tiring. And let's keep on. Let's keep going, and we will do our best to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. I think all of us can only support what you said. So I'm happy to hear that also from outside of Europe. Okay, the last speaker in our round before the closing remarks from Sebastian will be from Africa, DAtW2020. She's from the African Center of Excellence in Internet of Things, and I'm quite happy to hear what you tell us about. Please go on.
Thank you, Andreas. And I would first of all like to thank the IoT Forum for inviting me in this conference. So as I have seen in this conference, there is a lot of work which has been done in the area of IoT all over the world. However, in the African context, we are still lagging behind because we don't have professionals trained in IoT, and many young Africans do not have skills in the IoT field. So there is a lot to be done in this field as capacity building, where we need to train African scientists to be able to do IoT research-related projects. So it is in this regard that African Center of Excellence in Internet of Things have been created to train masters and PhD students to be able to work in the field of IoT. So, however, there are also some professional trainings which are being conducted in this African Center of Excellence in Internet of Things, where we sometimes get support from ICTP and other organizations or companies like WAZIHAP to train professionals in the field of IoT. So we work with different partners from Europe, from Africa, from America, from Asia, and they are from all academic and industry field. So in addition to that, again, there are few industries in the field of IoT in Africa and specifically in Rwanda. And even those few industries which we have in our region, most of them are startup companies. So they don't have sufficient funds to run IoT projects. So from this conference, I learned somewhere in one country where some big companies have big projects, and in those big projects they employ, or they also brings in these startups companies where they can innovate some small ideas or small projects in their big projects. So I was really impressed with this kind of working environment where we can also implement it in African countries to boost these startups companies. As we have seen, there are some closing conclusions I can give in this term, where we can recommend like private sector to lead some initiative projects like smart cities and other IoT related projects to develop and design applications in key sectors like agriculture, health, education, urban development, manufacturing, tourism, and public administration services. And in addition to that, we also think that to be able to achieve this, to be able to implement these IoT projects, we need also the government and private sector, private sector, and academia working together to foster innovation, education, infrastructure, and international alignments. Because without them working together, so we cannot achieve anything. So lastly, the government leadership and the private sector should put efforts in trusted emerging technologies, because if there is no security or if these emerging technologies are not trusted, people will not go for them. So that's what I can say as a conclusion for this closing session. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for the open words. I think we can now move on to Sebastian. I don't know, Latif, do you want to say something? Give a summary, some closing remarks before we move on to Sebastian?
No, I think Sebastian will do the final words. So Sebastian.
Thank you very much. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night for some of you. It was been really an amazing experience to take part in this journey, in this 27 hours journey. I was thinking to the antiquity, where some philosophers or scientists or geographers were trying to understand the world and trying to navigate for years and years to start understanding a little bit their nearby surrounding. And now today in 24-hour period, we are able to run all over the world to meet and to discuss with experts, with researchers from all over the world, and that's quite amazing. I think it's a revolution per se. I take a certain number of takeaways of this conference. I think there's a large consensus from many speakers, from many experts, that we are at a turning point. We have a certain number of challenges to be addressed. It was mentioned, of course, COVID-19, e-health is an important one, but we are all aware of challenges related to the green transition, so to the energy transition, climate change. Biodiversity, we didn't mention it very much during this meeting, but biodiversity is also an amazing asset and heritage we received from the nature, which is a threat. Energy transition, we mentioned, technology can contribute to this transition. IoT can be a very important enabler for smart grids, for demand response. Privacy, data protection is also another very important challenge. And the economy. We need also to address the needs and the fears of the world population regarding jobs, regarding the future for their family, for the company, the industries. So it's to find a right balance. And again, technology can address and can be an enabler. It will not be a magical solution, but it can be a very strong enabler to address many of these challenges. The good news is that the world is full of intelligence. And I think this meeting, this conference has demonstrated that we have excellent experts, excellent researchers all over the world. And if I may take the remark from Stephen, he mentioned before the importance of trust in technology, but it's also trust in human science, in intelligence, in education, in smartness, in research. We probably have a lot to learn by building bridges among the different research communities, finding ways to synergize, to learn from each other, and to address the challenges we have to address together. One element which was mentioned also, and I think Bilal Jamoussi also, to remind the importance of interoperability and standardization, that if we want to have technology that is really accessible and affordable and which can scale up, we need to think in terms of global interoperability, global standards. And that cannot be done by one region only. It has to be done collaboratively. We need to leverage on different fora. We need to leverage on different opportunities to work together, to learn from each other, to try to converge towards global solutions which are able to scale up and to address the scale of the challenges we have to face. I want, of course, to thank all the speakers, all of you. Let me share just one or two slides very briefly. I will share my screen with you. And let me just one or two slides. So first of all, I'd like to thank all those who contributed to organize this event. Of course, all the team which has been behind the scene to organize, to support, to ensure the technological smoothness and support for this event. It was our first experiment, if I may say. We love to research and to experiment. So it was the first attempt. And there will be future opportunities to continue this exercise and this journey. But first of all, so thank you to all those who managed to support and organize this event. I want to thank all the speakers without whom this event would not have happened. We had also the chance to have a certain number of sponsors from the research, Nordic IoT Center, JACTO, also from the industry, different sponsors who have supported the events. You will see quite a number of research projects supporting universities, academic partners who have contributed to support the cost of this event. Again, it's a non-for-profit event. It's a non-commercial event. The idea is to bring the community together and in line with the mission of the IoT Forum to promote international dialogue and cooperation in the IoT and digital transformation domain. Now, some good news. We like to meet online, but there are also opportunities to meet in a real environment, to have more interactions. And the IoT Forum is currently working on a few events that will enable to continue this discussion and these interactions. One will be focused on privacy and data protection. It is planned in Venice. It will be hosted by the University of Venice in June next year. We hope that by then the COVID-19 confinement measures will be over, the vaccines will have been widely adopted and distributed. So that's a first event. Of course, we have the next IoT Week, which was planned this year, but we had to postpone it due to the COVID-19. The next one is planned end of August next year in Dublin. It will be quite a nice event. Dublin is very easily accessible from all over the world. There are very good flight connections. And finally, of course, we plan to have another digital around the world. Tentative dates are for next year. It's possible that if there is a strong push, we organize another event in between, but the tentative dates for the next digital around the world event is October 2021. And what we'd like to do, this first edition was an opportunity to test and to explore this concept, this notion. What we'd like to do with you is to ensure that for the next edition, we will scale up and really engage the communities of the world. The objective would be to ensure that we can have a kind of cascade effect with all the good speakers we had from the different regions to identify who can be the relays in the research community, both from the academic side and industry side, to ensure that the next event will enable to bring as many people as possible together, to share ideas, to share knowledge, to share visions for a better future. So that's all on my side. Just want again to thank you, all of you. I want to invite to make a big applause. I don't know if it's possible for all the organizing teams, for all the speakers, for all the keynote speakers, and to wish you all the best, good health, continue to research, continue to explore, continue to share ideas, vision, knowledge in order to build a better world. Thank you very much.
Digital around the world.